Hello, today we are going through the first part of the Alleyn School Maths sample paper. So let's get straight into these solutions. Okay, so let's start off with a pretty simple opener. How many minutes are there in 3.5 hours? So here, it's not very tough. The main thing is just not making any silly mistakes. So the first thing we know is how many minutes there are in a single hour. So we know if we have minutes here and we have, let's say, hours here, we know that 60 minutes make up 1 hour. So now we're told to scale this to 3.5 hours or 3.5. So we can use this logic just as we're multiplying the hours column, right? This column here, just as we're multiplying the hours column by 3.5, we can work out how many minutes this should be equal to by multiplying the minutes column by 3.5. So how do we do this? 60 times 3.5. Well, 60 times 3 is 180, right? Because 6 times 3 is 18, but then it's 60, not 6. So we have 180. And then 0.5 times 60 is 30. It's half of 60, 0.5 times 60. So we have the 180 and then we have the 30. So it should be 210 minutes, which we see is an option right here. So the answer is C. Okay, so now for this next question, which of these fractions is equal to 0.8? So we can work this out. 0.8. The key here is to not get distracted by all of these distractor answers, right? Like these answers that the examiner puts in just to distract you from actually working out the real answer, like 1/8. You see 0.8, you see 1/8, you think, oh, it might be 1/8. No. If we're going to do this, we have to take it step by step and understand what's going on. And really what's going on is we have different columns once we move past the decimal point. So we have the tenths column. And then if we had another number here, this would be the hundredths column. And it goes on like this. This would be the thousandths column. But in this case, we just have 0.8. So because this 8 is over here, we're working in the tenths column. And because we're working in the tenths column, we know this is 8 out of 10. The same way, if the number was 0.08, this 8, this value, would now be in the hundredths column, right? And because it's in the hundredths column, this would be 8 over 100. That's how this works. So the answer is not 1/8. The answer is 8 over 10. But we can see that the answer, or that value, 8 out of 10, is not one of our answer choices. And that's because the examiner is expecting us to simplify this fraction and put it into its simplest form. And we can do this by taking out the common factor of 2. Why? Because 2 goes into 8 and 2 also goes into 10. 2 times 4 is 8. And 2 times 5 is 10. And therefore, we can simplify this fraction 8 over 10 and turn it into 4 over 5 by taking out that common factor of 2. Now, for this next question, we're working out which one of these numbers is the smallest. Now, we're going to use a lot of the same logic and understanding that we just went through in the previous question, because all of these numbers are smaller than 1, right? We have 0 point something. So here, to work this out, we have to have a good understanding of those same columns we were talking about. The tenths column, the hundredths column, thousandths column, so on and so forth. So for example, if we take these first two answer choices, 0.0801 and 0.08, which one is smaller? Well, it's going to be B, 0.08, because 0.08 is the same thing as 0.08000 onto infinity. But A has 0.08, but then it has 0.1. So that 0.1 at the end means it's just a bit bigger than 0.0. So you see, it's all about comparing the columns as we move further right from the decimal point. So now let's compare B and C and go through the rest of these answer choices. We have 0.08 and then 0.081. Well, here in the thousandths column, we have a 1, where here in the thousandths column, we have a 0. So therefore, this has to be bigger. C has to be bigger than B. And then if we move on to D, D is also going to be bigger than B, because although it's quite far along, in the, not the tenths or the hundredths or the thousandths or the tens of thousands, but in the hundreds of thousandths column, we have a 1, where in that same column for B, again, we would have a 0. So D is bigger than B. And same thing for E. E is quite a bit bigger compared to the rest than B, because yes, we have the 0.08, just like we have in B, but then straight away in the thousandths column, we have that 8. We have 8 thousandths, and here we have 0 thousandths. And of course, because 8 is bigger than 0, E is bigger than B. Now for this question, we simply have to try and be realistic, working out the most likely length of a television remote control. So here, it's not going to be 0.17. That's far too tiny. And same thing with 1.7 centimeters. Very, very small. If you think about a ruler and you think about 10 centimeters or a 30 centimeter ruler, think about how small only 1.7 of those centimeters would be. It can't be B or A. 17 centimeters. Now this seems a bit more likely. Again, think of an object that you are familiar with, that 15 or that 30 centimeter ruler. Think about how big that is in your head. If we half that into a 15 centimeter ruler, and then we think about the size of a TV remote control, it's around that size, the 15 centimeter mark. And therefore 17 centimeters is reasonable. It's realistic. So C looks like our answer, but we can confirm that because it's definitely not going to be D. 170 centimeters. That's more than a meter. That's 1.7 meters. That's far too long. And of course, E is just going to be a joke. So C is our answer. Think about familiar objects. Now, for this question, we have to understand bid mass. If we don't get bid mass right, then we will not get this question right. So bid mass telling us the order that we tackle these kind of questions in. Because we see we have subtraction, we have multiplication, we have addition. So we could start answering this question from so many different places. As you see for this question, we could start with 12 minus 2. Or we could start with 4 plus 3. Or we could start in the middle with 2 times 4. So how do we know where to start? Especially when starting in different places affects our answer. That's where bid mass comes in. So because we have bid mass and we know that it's brackets, indices, division and the multiplication, addition and subtraction on the same level, we know that multiplication is what we should start with. And therefore we start by doing 2 times 4. And this 2 times 4 gives us 8. And now we have 12 minus 8 plus 3. And now we're on this level here, addition and subtraction. And these are on the same level, so we can take it simply going left to right. So 12 minus 8 gives us 4. 4 plus 3 gives us 7. And therefore our answer is A. Okay, so here for this next question, we have to be very logical. So we know one of the angles in an isosceles triangle is 30 degrees. Which of these is a possible other angle in the triangle? So first things first, we need to understand what we mean when we say isosceles triangle. This is an example of an isosceles triangle. And the whole point with an isosceles triangle is that we have two sides of equal length. And usually we denote those two sides with these dashes that we put through the sides of the triangle that are of equal length. So in this example, the examiner is telling us that this side here and this side here are of equal length, right? So that's an isosceles triangle, two sides of equal length. But the next important thing to understand is that because we have two sides of equal length, that means we have two angles of equal value. So in this case, this angle here, A, would be equal to this angle here, also A. And then this angle here would be a bit different. It would be B. And then to answer this question, we combine that understanding of an isosceles triangle with the understanding that every single angle on a triangle needs to add up to what? 180 degrees, no matter what the triangle is, whether it's equilateral, scalene, isosceles, right angled, every single triangle has to add up, or the angles inside the triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. Make sure you remember that. So now with this understanding, we can answer this question, or tackle this question at least, because really we have two scenarios. We're told one of the angles in an isosceles triangle is 30 degrees. So it's either that this 30-degree angle is B and the other two are different and equal, or I'll put it in green now, different scenario. The other scenario is that one of these two equal angles are 30 degrees. And then B is different. We have those two scenarios. So based on those two scenarios, let's work out the possible angles in this triangle, which will help us answer this question. So let's do scenario one in red. Okay, scenario one right here. In this case, we're saying that this angle B is 30 right here. If this was the case, what must these other two angles A and A be? Well, if we know that the whole triangle adds up to 180 and B is 30, that means these two must add up to give us 150, right? It's the 180 of the entire triangle minus this 30 for angle B. 180 minus 30, giving us this 150. And if we know that A plus A is 150, that means 2A is 150. And if we divide both sides by 2, left-hand side and right-hand side of the equation, then A has to equal 75 degrees. So that's one of the options, right? We have 30, 75, 75. And then what about scenario 2? So in scenario 2, we're saying that the 30 is one of our angles A. So this would be 30 and this would be 30. So these two add up to give us 60. And in that case, this angle here would have to be 120, right? Because we have the 180 minus the 30, 30, right? Minus 30, minus 30, giving us 120. Telling us that this angle here, the remaining angle, has to be this 120. So from scenario 1, we have 75. From scenario 2, we have 120. So now let's look at our answer choices, and we see that E has to be our correct answer, 75 degrees. based on scenario 1. Okay, so here we have a question that shouldn't be too hard if you understand your fractions. We're told 1/4 of the pupils in a class are girls, the rest are boys. What is the ratio of girls to boys? So, if we know that 1/4 of the pupils are girls, that means 1/4 are girls. That's what a quarter is, 1/4. And therefore, this means that 3 out of 4 are boys. So let's really deconstruct that language. 1 out of 4, 1/4, is fraction, are girls. 3 out of 4, 3/4, are boys. And I'm saying it really slowly and weirdly on purpose because when you say it like that, you can understand how this ratio must work. Because overall, we have a group of 4 pupils, for example, and in every single group of 4 pupils, 1 out of 4 are girls. Remember what we said over here? 3 out of 4 are boys. What we said over here. And therefore, the ratio must be 1 to 3. And we can even prove this. Let's say we had a class of 12 pupils, okay? You have a class of 12 pupils. If 1/4 are girls, that's 1/4 of 12, right? Giving us 12/4. Cancel vertically, we have 1 and we have 3, so it's 3/1, right? Or 3. And then for the boys, we have 3/4 of 12. In this case, we have 3 times 12, 36, divided by 4, which is 9, right? So we have 3 girls and 9 boys out of the 12 pupils. And of course, we can cancel this down to 1 and 3. So this is our answer, 1, 2, 3, which is C. Okay, so that is all for today. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you're the first to know when the next video is released. And on that note, I will see you all next time.